Hey all, this is Ed,
And this is Kara.
and this is your day's dumpster fire. So, how's it going?
Not bad. Vegging out. Doing nothing. Actually, I'm not doing nothing, but I'm not doing work. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Those past couple of weeks of this past semester have been absolutely grueling. It's
Yes.
I remember teaching before. I remember like that last couple of weeks is just insane, and that's back when I had like 130 students. Now, when we have a fraction of that, and it's like, why is this taking longer?
Why is this harder? I don't understand.
Well, and I felt so bad the last few weeks of the semester because I remember this time last year, because I was working at a different place than you were, and you're like, I can't record. I've got to get this stuff done.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Kara, you have like less than 20 students. Like, come to me to complain when you're at 130, then we can talk. And then I got into it, and I'm like, oh, this is a lot more involved.
Yep.
Yeah, a little foot and mouse syndrome there.
That's okay.
But yeah, no, that kind of ties us into our. We have a mutual trash can fire. So I remember we ended the semester with like all these grand plans of mapping out the rest of the semester, creating all this new content, and we were over our holiday break. We were going to revolutionize all of education.
Over a 2-week period.
For a 2-week period, we were going to do what no other institution or teachers have ever done, and that is perfect education. And we were fully prepared to do that. And now we're like halfway through it, and we were just talking how much we have not gotten done.
Now, to be fair, I've been doing a lot of art.
That's true.
It's not nothing. But yeah, no work.
Yeah.
No work stuff. Sorry, children.
But no, we'll be fine. Because what will happen is probably about starting Wednesday or Thursday, we'll start dabbling in it, and then by the end of the week, or by the time we have to go back, we will have a lot of stuff planned out and mapped out and created and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, people, I don't think, unless you've worked in education, you just don't realize how much, I don't want to say physical energy is needed to teach, but the mental energy is a lot more taxing than what people, I think, fully understand.
Yeah, it's brain frying. Like, the most brain frying thing that I've ever done in my life. Which is not a bad thing. It's just, it's exhausting.
Yeah, it's just like, because you have to look at every single student individually as a human being, and you have to accurately figure out what it is they know and what they don't know and what needs to be worked on. And then you've got to somehow group people based on what it is that some need or don't need or whatnot. And yeah, and there's no such thing as a teacher hating a student.
No.
We'll have a lot of teenagers that will say, "Oh yeah, this teacher hated my guts." Like, no, not necessarily. If they truly hated your guts, then they're in the wrong profession. So, like, when you're coming up with these grades and these reports for the parents to see, it's like you really, really, really have to analyze and internalize everything that is going on with that kid. And I think that's what really sucks the brain power out, because every kid is in a completely different spot.
Yeah. Even when we try to make groupings, the groupings are difficult to make because everybody's so spread out, which is fine.
Yeah,
it's just it's work, I guess. I mean, work is work, but you know.
Yeah, it's one of those things like you can go out into your backyard and rake up a bunch of leaves or whatever, and then you can come inside and and for the most part, your body may be a little sore, but you could still do office work. With education, it's the exact opposite. It's you could sit at a computer screen for 8 hours, if you're obviously not teaching during that, but you could stare at a computer screen and not type up a single thing, but you'll have figured out a ton of stuff, and you just want to go home and close your eyes and not think about anything anymore for the rest of the day.
Yep.
Because it's a completely different form of energy, I think, than say physical manual labor. I've done both, and I can definitely tell you, being mentally fried and being physically fried both sucks.
I agree.
So yeah, speaking of being a hot mess, mentally fried brainstem, if you are listening to this episode and you have not listened to episode 18, you might want to go back and listen, or even re-listen to episode 18, because in episode 18, we went over the Hubble Space Telescope and how, like, what were the advantages of putting a telescope into space orbiting Earth? You know, what would be the cost associated with it? We kind of went over really how this thing, the Hubble Space Telescope, was really kind of engineered right around the and I just found this out today. The Hubble Space Telescope was kind of like the brother to the Space Shuttle program. They both kind of started together. So we kind of went over, basically put the instant they decided, hey, let's put a telescope into space. It was one issue after another. They're right off the bat. It was supposed to be like a $5 million project, and it was supposed to be done in a couple of years. No, it took like over a decade to even get this thing in a position where it could be put into space. They had budgeting issues the whole way through. The company that was supposed to be making them here, Perkins Elmer, it seemed like they had time management problems. They had what we'll find out, instrumentation issues. They had managerial issues, and it was just getting pushed back over and over and over. And then in 1986, it was ready to go. Like, cool, let's get this thing up there. And then the Challenger explosion. So the Challenger explosion, obviously, that was that famous case. I may look into that in a future episode, but basically there was like an O-ring surrounding one of the engine thrusters or something like that, and it basically leaked all the fuel to the outside of the shuttle, and then within a second, it just absolutely blew up into a million pieces. And NASA does not like rushing stuff like that. Whenever something like that goes down, NASA likes to shut everything down and analyze exactly what happened and how to prevent that. So our lovely, I think they finished it. It was at $8 or $9 billion or something like that. And now Hubble was grounded for like 4 more years. This fancy telescope had to sit in a sterile room. You just can't wrap this telescope up in newspapers and then stick it in your attic. It doesn't work like that. They had to keep it in a heavily monitored, heavily controlled clean room, which is like millions of dollars a month to just have it sit there for 4 years. And so I guess the benefit of that was that during that 4 years, 1986 to 1990, there's a lot of technological development that came down. So like the processors that they came up with in the early 80s that they put in the Hubble, like, wait, it's 1990. It's like, dude, you're getting a Dell. Like you've got so much much more horsepower that can go in the cameras, like everything during that 4-year time period was being incrementally updated. And that was pretty cool. It's not like they just sat there, forgot about it, and then sent up an obsolete telescope. It was actually pretty state of the art when it did go up. So then 1990, they get it up there, and they were, it takes a couple of weeks to get everything situated, make sure everything's calibrated and all that kind of stuff. And, it was getting ready to take its first picture. And there were millions of people around the world. I mean, news stations were in on this. I think every single astronomer in the world was hovering around their televisions waiting to see this, because the idea is that when you're using a space telescope, you're not having to look through Earth's atmosphere, which really distorts everything in the nighttime sky.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody had really seen what these galaxies and nebulas and even planets would look like outside of like the Voyager probes and stuff like that. Like, what would it look like without that blur of Earth's atmosphere? And so they pointed it at a very, very famous galaxy. It's called M100. It's a catalog number. They call it the Pinwheel Galaxy. And for all intents and purposes, it's a pretty simple galaxy. It's a spiral galaxy, it's face on. It's a good test subject for this. If you factor in inflation, would have been a $24 billion telescope. If you factor in everything that they put into it.
Jeez.
That first image came in of M100, and it was blurry.
Can you imagine how disappointing that would be? Like,
oh. Well,
you do all this work to get it up into space, you get past the atmosphere and all of that fun stuff. You spend all this money on it, and it's blurry.
Oh, yeah, and all the heartache and the logistics issues and all that. Because the people that work on these things, it's you may not realize it, but even like the Mars rovers and these probes that we send out, there are these people that have been attached to this object for decades. Like, they were in their 20s and 30s working on this thing, and now they're in their 40s and 50s. Retirement is around the corner, kind of a thing. And they've been working on this singular object for all that time.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
And then find out, yeah, and it really is kind of optically, for no pun intended, optically to the media, this was an absolute disaster, because the world was like, okay, NASA, what happened with Challenger? And now you have a failed telescope. Like, is NASA really up for the task? And I wanted to find, actually I did find a whole bunch of like late night shows and all this kind of stuff that where the hosts would come out and they would just rag on NASA about Hubble. And a lot of them are pretty funny, but I also didn't want to get us like into copyright issues, so I didn't.
Fair. Yeah,
I didn't include them until I know the copyright laws a little better. But you can just YouTube it, and it is just relentless. Like, the world is just dogging on America and NASA. Yeah, because this was also the same time that America was dealing with a lot of issues in the Middle East, and yeah, it was just it was a very unfortunate time. And it's not uncommon for a telescope to be pointed at an object and not have it be sharp. The issue was that they couldn't focus it.
So they couldn't even fix it?
Yeah, like, they were literally turning the digital focus knob on their computer, and it takes like a minute for the telescope to receive the signal, and then like, okay, let's move this lens back. And there's a type of a camera in there. It's a where was it? There was, oh man, where was it? Oh, whiff pick. So the whiff pick camera is but for like the news media, for you and I, the whiff pick camera, the WFPC camera, is the ones that are the most important, is the camera that's most important to us. See, the Hubble had 5 cameras on there, and 4 of those cameras produced absolutely nothing that you could see. It just collected infrared data, redshift data. The output, that's what the astronomers want. That's what the astrophysicists want. That's what they want. And the whiff pick, though, is the camera that produces the beautiful pictures of galaxies and nebulas and planets and stuff like that. Believe it or not, that camera has very little scientific use at all, but it's something that we as the media consumers want to be able to see these cool pictures. And these cameras had the ability to focus this light. And what was interesting is that the Hubble telescope, the primary mirror on that thing, is like 2.4 meters in diameter. How many feet that is, I don't know. It's a lot of feet.
It's a
But
lot. It's still a lot. Don't worry
yeah,
about it.
it's we'll say it's plenty of feet.
Oh, perfect.
My assumption it would be like stacking two humans on top of each other. But that's what I think is equivalent to it. So that primary mirror bounces the light up to the very, very nose end of the telescope where there's a mirror up there called the secondary mirror. And then that mirror takes all that light data and then, or the photons, and it condenses it, like it makes a cone, and it beams it through the hole that sits in the middle of the primary mirror. And then from there, that's where all these instruments sit. And they look like a cheap drawing of like a house, where it's like a square with a little like pointed roof type of thing on it.
Okay. Yeah.
That's what these instruments looked like, and they were kind of thin, and they were about the size of a telephone booth, but they would basically slide in like a cone. It would slide in, and at the very ends of those points of those cones, they had the instruments that would collect the light and send it to whatever instrument that it was going to. And so the whiff pick had the ability to focus, and there's dozens of little lenses in there. And some of them I was reading, some of them were like the size of a dime.
Mhm.
They were trying to maneuver all these lenses. No dice. They couldn't fix it.
Yikes.
Now, what's interesting is that the rest of the instrumentation didn't care if the image was sharp. Like, if you're getting a spectral analysis of a star, it doesn't have to be sharp. You just need to know what molecules are absorbing what part of the light spectrum. And whether it's tack sharp or blurry, it doesn't matter. So, like, the telescope was still able to collect a lot of data. And for the time period that NASA was working on a fix, it was doing good research. But people like us watching the news, we don't want to see pages and pages and pages of numbers. We want to see cool looking pictures.
Right.
This is where like the media ran with this, and it was a very, 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 I want to say expensive disaster, because the telescope for the most part was still able to collect information. It's just, it's not sexy, it's not beautiful, it's not pretty. That's what we want as consumers. So there was an investigation done, and of course NASA immediately just pointed their fingers at that Perkins-Elmer company.
Of course.
There was a commission headed by Lou Allen. He was the director of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Like, he just targeted the lens company. Not lens, but the mirror company. He's like, somewhere in all these years of screw-ups and mismanagement and managerial issues, somewhere in all of this has to be the root cause. Somewhere in all this is where you guys screwed up. And I don't even know if this Elmer Perkin company is still around today. Perkins, Elmer. Oh, they have stock. I like this. Their motto is for the better.
Nice.
Oh, they're trading at $110 per share. So, assuming that this is the same company, I mean, they walked away from this thing. But yeah, anyways. So somewhere in all this, this Lou Allen guy is like, this is your fault somehow, some way. And he did find a lot of issues. There was all sorts of stuff that, from a logistical standpoint, that they had set up was a disaster. And what Perkins Elmer really wanted to do is they're like, hey, look, we've got these really, really cool, fancy computers that can grind this mirror way better than any of our normal hand machines could do.
Okay.
And NASA was like, no, we want this done the right way. Because like NASA knows that computers have issues. Like, hello, Theric 25.
Yeah, they would know.
Yeah, they would know. Or look at the entire Apollo program, where it seemed like every mission had an issue where there was a software glitch that wasn't working right. Perkin Elmer wanted to go one way, and NASA's like, no, you're going to do it the old-fashioned way because we know that it works. How do you measure something so, like, how do I want to word this? If you were to go up to the Hubble telescope's primary mirror, and like you walk right up to it, it would look flat. You would not be able to tell, unless you looked at it from the very, very edge, you would not be able to tell that that thing is curved. The same thing with like these giant telescopes, like the one that we have down by at like Kitt Peak Observatory, right? You know, these things are just massive, massive mirrors. And if you go up to it, you can't see that they're curved. That's how shallow of a grind they are. And then you take something as big as 2.4 meters, you know, yeah, sure, that mirror was only 2 inches thick, but still, like, how do you measure the accuracy of that? What they have to use is a device called a null corrector.
Null corrector.
And what a null corrector does is it, for the lack of better words, it basically helps the mirror grinders see where they need to take off more material, because you can't take off too much. If you take off too much, you can't put it back on.
Okay.
Yeah, because glass doesn't grow that way. So you have to like grind it very, very slowly, and you have to run it through this null corrector, a lot. And basically what it does is it is basically a fancy flashlight. But at the very, very end of it, you are shining this beam of light. It's very, very bright, but you are shining like this little beam of light through this hole that is really not much bigger than that of a human hair.
Okay.
When you shine this and you hit that mirror, you can use it to create like a grid. And where parts of the grid look a little warped, that's where they need to grind. Because that null corrector is like, okay, this mirror has to be ground parabolically. So for those of you out there who may not know, a parabola is, if you ever look at a graph where it kind of comes down as a point at the bottom, where it's like they both curved lines come down to a single point, that's a parabola. A spherical mirror is like, imagine like a basketball. It doesn't come down to a single point quite like a parabolic mirror does. A parabolic mirror means that whatever light hits that curved part, it will bounce off at anywhere at any angle. It will bounce off, and then both sides of that parabola, meaning that the light will bounce off the sides and then will come to a point in the middle of that parabola, depending on how shallow or deep or the slopes of the curves and all that kind of stuff. That determines where that focus is going to be, or in math, I think it's called a foci. But a parabolic mirror means that wherever light hits that mirror, it will bounce and hit at that same point every single time.
Nice.
Most like Newtonian type telescopes, like the big, tall, round ones that you see people like towing behind their cars, those will use a parabolic mirror, whereas a compound telescope like a Schmidt-Cassegrain or whatever, and you can look them up, but they use spherical mirrors because they have a corrector plate in the front that corrects for that sphericalness. Because a spherical mirror doesn't send all the light to one point. It only sends that light to like another curved surface, meaning you have another mirror that is curved spherically that will then help bring that light to a point, and you have a corrector plate that mirror sits on that helps correct it. And that's why you still have spherical mirrors. They serve a very big purpose. But the Hubble was supposed to be ground to a parabolic mirror, and this null corrector, they found out that there was like a little scratch. So there, at the very end of it, there was like a tiny little scratch on there. The technicians were like, well, we can fix it, but it's going to mess with the mirror. And the Perkins-Elmer was like, we don't care what you got to do, fix it. And they're like, okay. So they fixed this tiny little scratch at the end of it. And in doing so, somebody forgot to adjust the settings, because now that grid is going to be altered a little bit. They forgot to factor out the fact that, hey, by fixing this little paint chip or scratch at the very end of it, that's going to alter the accuracy of that tool, and the tool can still be used, but you have to adjust your calculations after that, right? It's kind of like, like let's say you're driving a pickup truck and you buy new tires for it.
Okay.
This time you decide, hey, let's go with bigger tires. Well, when you're driving 45 miles an hour down the road with the stock tires, and then you're driving 45 miles an hour with the new bigger tires, you've got to account for the fact that the bigger the tire is going to mess with your velocity, because one rotation of that tire goes further on the bigger one than it does on the smaller one. So even though your speedometer is like, oh yeah, the axle's spinning at this rate, so we're clearly going 45 miles an hour, when in reality you could be going 47, 50, 52 miles an hour. And if you don't know that, you can't account for that, and the next thing you know, you're getting speeding tickets left and right.
Okay.
It's like, it's okay to alter the tool, but you've got to go back and make sure that afterwards you've accounted for that alteration. And that's where the ball got dropped. They were in such a rush to get this mirror out because it had been delayed so much that they forgot to account that this null corrector was off a little bit. And when we're talking off a little bit, it was like 1,000th of a human hair.
Jeez.
That's all it was. And so what happened was that the mirror, especially around the edges, were ground spherically, and the center was more parabolic. And again, like you could get you could look at a correct mirror that was done start to finish and look at the Hubble mirror, the same exact make and model and everything. You could not look at these mirrors and tell that one of them is off. There's just no way you could identify that. So they looked at it and they're like, all right, cool, pack it up, ship it out, let's get it out there.
Okay.
Basically, the edge of the mirror was ground at a slightly different grinding angle, I guess, than the middle. And so when you have that, no matter how many times you turn that focuser knob, you will never, ever, ever get that focused. It's the proper term in optics is called a spherical aberration, and it's usually a product of very cheaply ground mirrors, which, when you're spending billions of dollars on a telescope, having the term cheaply manufactured mirror is it's not a good look.
Yeah, you don't want that on your...
I was reading up on my my mom for, I think it was my 13th birthday. She got me a book about the Hubble telescope. And so this was like fresh in everyone's mind. But there was a line in there where they talked about this issue. The issue was that the mirror wasn't ground imperfectly. It was imperfectly ground perfectly.
That's confusing. It's
not like they used crap equipment. It's not like they used bad methodologies. Well, actually, they kind of use bad methodologies, but it's not like they set out and, different parts of it were ground completely incorrectly. Certain parts of it weren't. It wasn't like they were trying to necessarily cut a lot of costs on it, even though that's kind of what happened. Based off that null corrector, they ground it perfectly. That null corrector said, hey, this is what you're telling me to measure. This is my output. And you guys ground this thing based off of me being a null corrector. This is a perfect grid. So they ground it perfectly. They just ground it to the wrong shape. That's what botched everything up.
Way to go, guys.
Once they found that out, like, there's a lot of people that have been in charge of this Hubble program since day one. We're talking people that have been on this thing for, half their working careers. They're like, well, I guess we're done for. Like, we can't do anything about this now. But NASA likes to hire people with very diverse backgrounds.
Okay.
One engineer, I think he came from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory.
JPL, yeah.
And he's like, why are we giving up now? This is kind of a trivial problem. And of course, the people that are in charge of all the directors and stuff like that, like, how is this a trivial problem? And then this engineer is like, well, what do humans do when we have bad vision? What do we do if somebody is nearsighted or farsighted or has myopia or whatever?
We wear glasses.
It's just interesting how NASA of all their brains, that top leadership, they never thought that this is a fixable problem. And it stems from the idea of your eyes, right? The back of your eyeballs have absolutely no idea that the front of your eyes have any issues. Like it can't tell or doesn't really care that you may have a deformity in your lens in your eye or whatever. No, it doesn't. So let's stop pretending that the mirror is defective. And instead, let's write a prescription.
Okay.
The prescription couldn't have come at a better time, because how do you fix something like this? Well, there was a part of the Hubble telescope that all the marketing and all the media conferences, all that stuff, there was a part that they didn't really hit upon that much. Everybody was asking all these reporters were asking, like, oh, what can we see? You know, what it's going to look like, and blah, 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 blah. But remember when I said at the beginning of the episode that the Hubble was kind of like the blood brother of the shuttle program?
Right.
Well, the shuttle program was a huge divergent from the Apollo program, in that with the Apollo program, every rocket you send up, it is a one-time use thing. That is it. Like your lunar module is stuck on the moon, right? Everything, the rocket boosters fall off and they burn up in the atmosphere. Like really, when you have this $1 billion mission per mission to go to the moon, the only piece of hardware that you're left with out of all of that material and all those resources and all that engineering and technical information and all that kind of stuff, the only thing that you have left is a space capsule that may weigh like 1% of the entire craft. And that's all you return back with, and a sack full of moon rocks.
Well, that sounds useless.
Yeah, all of that is completely wasted. And the shuttle program is like, okay, well, the idea behind a shuttle is that you shuttle people forward and backwards. So the whole space shuttle program, and its geniusness, is like, we can use a vast majority of the spacecraft over and over and over again, which means that we're designing this really, really fancy telescope. And the given, like, because, I mean, if you think about it, like, you look at the computer revolution, look at how far, because the inception of the shuttle program, the inception of Hubble, and all of that started in the 70s. And then you fast forward all the way to 1990. I mean, my God, the amount of computer technology and engineering and the robustness of, like, it had, I can't calculate how many times it has doubled itself in its capabilities. So the way that they were looking at it is like, okay, well, if we're going to build this fancy telescope and we've got this new shuttle program, we can set up service missions. And NASA baked in to the budget, they baked it in where, like, every 3 to maybe 5 years, they would send up a space shuttle with a bunch of really, really smart astronauts, and they would make upgrades.
Okay.
Or make corrections, or, like, there should be no reason why this thing couldn't last for like 10, 15, 20 years, right? That's what they had. They had service mission number 1. And the service mission number 1 was originally supposed to fix some known errors. Like, there was some gyroscopic issues. There was issues with the solar panels. There was like a couple of other things that they were going to upgrade. And I actually have a full list of what they did do, because it is, yeah, they did a lot. They were in 1993. These astronauts started to work on 2 things. Oh, by the way, I'm looking at my notes here. I wanted to throw on one thing.
Uh-huh.
You know, like James Webb Telescope?
Yeah.
That fancy new one. Do you know how far away it sits from Earth?
I have no idea.
1 million miles.
Dang.
We designed Hubble to be serviceable. The James Webb Telescope is not.
Yeah, I don't know how you'd be able to fix something 1 million miles away, aside from trying to get it back.
Yeah, even still, you can't do that. It's stuck in a Lagrange point, where a Lagrange point is basically, it is sitting so far away from Earth that Earth's gravity is pulling it in at the same rate that it is orbiting the sun. So it just stays in the same spot every time.
Oh, good.
Yep. So it will sit there forever and ever. And if you try to alter that path at all, like if you bring it in too close, then it's just going to start orbiting Earth in this really elliptical orbit, and then that thing's going to be useless. The James Webb Telescope, the reason why it took them so long to make it is because they had to make sure that thing was functionally perfect and nothing could go wrong, because there's hardly anything they could do.
Jeez.
And for the most part, it worked out great. The only issue they've had is they said it was a speck of dust that hit one of the mirrors at, I don't know, some unfathomably high speed, and that piece of dust knocked that mirror out of alignment. That's a piece of dust that's moving.
That's an impressive little piece of dust.
Yeah.
I like that little piece of dust, even though he caused a lot of mischief and mayhem, but that's why I like it.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it.
Good for the dust.
Yeah. Dust 1, telescope 0.
Pretty much.
Well, it's just so funny because it's like most of the mass of a galaxy is dust.
Yeah, go dust.
So yeah, like I wanted to kind of put that out there in comparison, because like with Hubble, it was designed to be serviceable and upgraded and all of that stuff. So 1993, a rather complex and fairly dangerous mission was put together to fix the Hubble. I remember like seeing this mission when I was a kid, and I remember hearing about it on the news, and they kind of played it off as like, oh yeah, they just did some upgrades and that was it. No, man. Like when I dug into what it is they had to do to fix Hubble, they had to use tools that haven't been invented yet, with procedures that haven't been fully tested. They had to figure out how to haul machinery so large that had never been done before. Because normally when you put a satellite up into space, you just fling it out there and you just move on with your life. But here they had to like connect to it, they had to dock to it, they had to these astronauts were practicing for like 6 to 8 months prior, just rehearsing how to just attach to the Hubble telescope, let alone all the procedures that they had to do to update it. Imagine trying to be an astronaut with those big giant gloves. You're having to use machinery that was better suited for brain surgery.
Wow.
So yeah, these guys and gal, yeah, I didn't realize it, but when I was kind of digging into it, and I'm going to leave a lot of it out just for the sake of time, but the amount of work that they had to go in to figure this thing out was insane. Just the procedures and all of that stuff. So how was the fix done? Well, the fix was broken down into 2 parts. And I mentioned one of them earlier. It's called the Wide Field Planetary Camera.
Mm-hmm.
The first one went up with the Hubble telescope in 1990. The other one, number 2, it was like a backup. And it wasn't done yet. It wasn't finished when the Hubble telescope went up, but it's done now. And the idea is that wide field planetary camera, that's the moneymaker. That's what people want to see on the news and newspapers and all that stuff. So they figured, well, okay, if the WIFPIC, as they called it, if WIFPIC 1 breaks down or whatever, we can just go up there with, in a service mission and swap it out, and we're good to go. WIFPIC 1 was supposed to be up there for quite a few years, but they were like, okay, we've got WIFPIC 2. That was the one that they modified. So when they went up there, they would ultimately swap that out. They modified that with the corrective contact lenses, basically.
Okay.
And I think they said that there was like 4 sets of lenses that they had to install into the WIFPIC in various different places, because when you take a picture of a galaxy or a nebula or a planet or whatever, what you want to do is you want to separate out all the colors. You want all the colors to hit different sensors.
Okay, that makes sense.
And so, like, for example, I think the WIFPIC had 48 different colors. So when you're looking at a picture of Jupiter taken by Hubble, that is the product of 48 different colors all being measured and calculated and then composited into one image. And so, like, they had to have lenses for a lot of these components in here that match the prescription exactly. Now, if you think that a giant mirror, 2.4 meter mirror, if you think a mirror like that could only be off by a tiny fraction of a human hair, how accurate do you think these lenses would have to be the size of a quarter or a nickel or a dime? Like, try scaling that down. If
No.
something that is the diameter of a car can't be off by any more than a human hair, that those tiny little lenses, they would have to be like quantumly perfect, I think.
Jeez, man. That's too much. Like,
yeah, like
props to them though.
When you kind of do the math or the rough math in your head, and you're like, oh my gosh, I would hate to be the optician that had to manufacture those things. And they probably didn't go through PerkinElmer either. They probably...
That's just so much.
So what they did is they modified WIFPIC 2, and that's what they were going to swap out when they got up there. Now for the really, really cool name. It's called CoStar. And CoStar was only used very briefly, and I'll explain that in a minute. But CoStar stands for Corrective Optics Space Telescope Axial Replacement.
Wait, one more time.
Corrective Optics Space Telescope Axial Replacement. So
replacement contact lenses for a telescope.
Yes. So the reason why the idea, well, actually, the reason behind CoStar was that, okay, we have WIFPIC, that, again, that's the moneymaker. We need to modify that camera to be as optically perfect as possible, and that one is going to take a priority, much to the chagrin of all the astronomers and physicists out there that were like, we don't care about the pretty pictures of Jupiter. We need to see the infrared. We need to see the X-rays. We need to be able to see, redshifting data. We need to see all this information that we can plug into equations. A pretty picture of Jupiter does not fit in any equation. Like, it just doesn't do anything for the actual hardcore science folks. So what they did was they created CoStar, and CoStar would be a lens system that would work on all the other cameras on board.
Okay.
So it wouldn't be as optically perfect as the WIFPIC camera, but it would definitely clean up the data a lot more for all the other instruments. And that was funny because that one isn't anywhere nearly like optically. It doesn't have to be as insane as WIFPIC, but it's got a lot of moving pieces in there, because if you're trying to focus an infrared beam versus an ultraviolet beam, you have to really move these lenses around to make things work depending on the frequency of light.
Okay.
So what's interesting is this CoStar thing was the size of a telephone booth. And this thing weighed as much as a car. And imagine, there's videos out there you could see these astronauts, they're moving around this gigantic, shiny metal telephone booth. And that was a thing that made it really, really dangerous, because I think they had to sacrifice a separate camera. So when it was all said and done, there was only 4 cameras instead of 5. I think that's correct. Hit me up if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I'm off by 1.
Okay.
But yeah, they had to shove this gigantic can of lenses, but more importantly, mechanical parts that would deflect the light to the corresponding cameras to make sure it's focusing properly and accurately for them. Whereas the WIFPIC camera is just strictly visual. That the WIFPIC isn't doing much with infrared. It's not doing ultraviolet. It's not doing X-rays. It's not doing all these other things. It just really is just there to suit the human eye. And so the CoStar, that was the other fix to it. Now, what's funny to note is that the CoStar was only used for a very short period of time, because all those other cameras, those original cameras, they've all been swapped out over the service missions. And the manufacturers of these new cameras are like, wait, well, if we know the issue, why don't we just manufacture a new camera, right? Because we want something more accurate or more precise or more, that can hit a wider range of infrared or whatever. We can, instead of relying on that CoStar, we can just incorporate those optics into that camera, and then we don't have to worry about the CoStar thing anymore.
Okay.
And so it only got used for a short period of time until those other service missions came along, and they would take out because the idea was, hey, if you get rid of the co-star, then we could put another camera in.
Got it. Yeah.
Right? And we could put another camera in that is manufactured specifically to account for that defect in the primary mirror.
Okay.
Which that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
And then you free up a ton of space in there. So that's what they did. Is the astronauts got up there. They believe they left like December 2nd of was it 1993, and then they came back on December 13th of 1993. So it was a 10-day mission. They sent up, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 astronauts. So Richard Covey, he was the commander. Kenneth Bowersox was the pilot. He actually, I didn't know this, but he administered a pretty wicked maneuver that actually pushed the Hubble telescope further away from Earth, thus improving its orbital lifespan.
Nice.
All satellites will come out of the sky.
Okay.
Everything will eventually fall because Earth's atmosphere does exist up there, but it's just super, super thin. But over the course of years, as kind of gets involved with the Earth's way upper atmosphere, it will slow down very incrementally. And when things in space slow down, then they're more affected by gravity and they want to fall in. Like that's eventually what's going to happen to the International Space Station. Is they're just going to let it drift down to the point where it's just going to burn up in the atmosphere.
Jeez.
I think that's going to be sometime in 2030. And what they'll do there is they'll position it so that when it does hit Earth's atmosphere, it's like on the south side of the Pacific Ocean. So it's like the south side of the east side of Africa.
Okay.
And then it will burn its way through the atmosphere at like 200 miles a second. As it, that's the speed that it's going to hit the atmosphere, and it's going to head up towards Alaska, and it will be vapor by the time it gets up there. But anyways, I digress. So yeah, Kenneth Bowersox, he was the pilot. Catherine Thornton, she was the lady she had to fix the solar panels because they weren't opening and closing correctly. Story Musgrave. He was the guy that did a lot. I think he was the one that did the installation of the WIFPIC and the CoStar systems. Claude Nicollier, he was the guy who was in charge of actually capturing the Hubble.
Wow.
Because if you think about it, you have two objects that are hurtling around Earth like tens of thousands of miles an hour. And you've got to somehow align up with this thing and then clutch it, like grab it with this grab arm boon thingy. That into itself is, I don't know how in the world they caught it, but good on him.
Yeah, for real.
And then you got Jeffrey Hoffman and then Thomas Akers. They were other technicians, kind of like Catherine Thornton and Story Musgrave. They were, they did a lot of electronics work, the gyroscope work, and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So they were up there for 10 grueling days. They had to do 5 spacewalks. And yeah, spacewalks were kind of considered common, but you just to go up into space to do one required a lot of prep work, let alone doing 5. And they did one like every day for 5 days straight. And these were massive amounts of work that they were doing. So, and these were probably the most dangerous spacewalks ever done, because so much of what needed to be done had never really been done in space before. You were having to operate under conditions that it's never been tested. We've never actually had to go up and fix a space telescope before. And so, yes, the main goal was to get WIFPIC and CoStar up and running. But these astronauts, got to say it with an accent, they also had to address the following issues. They had to replace the failing solar arrays by detaching the old ones and throwing them back at Earth and attach new ones. That was crazy because like this whole thing was like flopping around. And if you ever see those solar arrays, they were like the same length as the Hubble telescope. And so Catherine had to go out there and try to detach them and not get caught up in it and launch them off into space because they sucked.
Okay.
I feel like she could write a book about that because there was some really crazy stuff that went on with that. Then they had to replace the solar array drive electronics. So the Hubble telescope, they have these motors in it where they can basically roll and unroll the solar panels. And I'm not exactly sure why they would need to, but they still wanted to retain that capability. They had to upgrade the magnometers. They had to install coprocessors for the flight computer. So like I was mentioning before, technology was improving so fast in the 80s and 90s that, you know what, let's upgrade the processing power of this thing, since it's already been 3 years and, we've like tripled our computing capabilities. Install 2 rate sensor units, install 2 gyroscopes, and the 2 gyroscopic electronic control units. So the gyroscopes are probably the most important thing. How do you figure out what you're pointed at in space? Well, you take a spinning object. Like, you've probably seen those videos where like that professor takes a bicycle wheel and he's holding the axle in each hand and they spin it really, really fast.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that.
And then as he tilts the wheel, then he starts spinning like on a pivot. Not sure if you've ever seen those.
Yep, I have.
Okay. That's a gyroscope. And so when like you could have, say, like a 50-pound wheel spinning at, 10,000 RPM, that wheel is going to stay perfectly flat every time. Meanwhile, the rest of the spacecraft will move around it. And because that gyroscope is sitting perfectly parallel to a certain degree on Earth, no matter where that telescope is pointed, it will tell you what angle everything is at. And it's very precise, very complicated, very expensive piece of machinery. So they actually, I think they said there was 5 and 3 of them had already gone out. So they put 2 more in there. And then install the Goddard High Resolution Spectrograph Redundancy Kit. Because if there's anything that NASA loves, they love redundancy. Like, the James Webb Telescope has redundant everything. They put so many redundancy, like backup computers, and for good measure, right? You can't service it, so if something takes a dump on you,
sure,
it's good to have
not?
a backup.
Yeah.
So, and especially when you don't have to worry about, like, all you have to worry about is just getting it to a certain point. Then spend extra money and let's load up on redundant stuff. So like, as opposed to like, say, like the Mars rovers, not as much redundancy, because you don't want that thing being too heavy, because it's one thing to get it up into space, but then it's another thing to actually get it out of space and get it to land somewhere. So like the Mars rovers, they don't have a lot of redundancy, but say like you've got your visual camera and you have your infrared camera, but they designed like your visual camera without an IR bandpass filter on it, meaning there's no IR blocker on it. So if they had to use the visual camera in a pinch for an IR situation, they can.
Okay.
It won't be as good as a dedicated camera, but it can still get a job done. So that's how they get around that with rovers. And then of course they had to replace WIF-PIC 1 and install CoStar. So these astronauts have been practicing in that NASA's giant swimming pool facility. I would love to see that thing. Where they actually have like full scale models of the Hubble telescope inside of a swimming pool.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, it's just wild. They were working on it for 6 to 8 months in preparation for the mission. And then on December 10th, Hubble was patched up and re-released back into its orbit. And on December 13th, the crew of the Endeavour landed safely back at the Kennedy Space Center. They were exhausted. I remember seeing pictures of them after they landed. They had not slept well, because, here are you and I, like, we're talking about being mentally brain fried at the end of a semester.
Right.
These guys and gal, not only were they mentally brain fried, but they were also physically fried, because it was just nonstop.
Yikes.
Yeah.
It's gnarly, huh?
Well, and if you think about it, like, Catherine Thornton, I saw a video on her today. She's like, the most exhausting part of any spacewalk is when you open up that hatch and all you see is Earth below you.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
Yeah, like you don't know which way you're really pointed. You don't know which way you're going. And she's like, you eventually figure it out, but your brain is constantly having to correct, because it's not like your ears can tell you anything. That's our ears on Earth are our gyroscopes. That's why we get seasick, right? Our ears are telling us while we're bouncing around on a boat. Our ears are saying one thing, but our eyes are saying a different thing, and that's what gets us dizzy and sick. That's the same thing in space, except for in space, your ears can't do anything for you, because what's up?
Right.
Yeah.
It's confusing. It's your brain.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And so like she said that you have to always be thinking about that all the time. And then if you're changing an angle or something like that, you have to if you say, hey, I've got to turn this thing 5 degrees, but I'm sitting at a 15-degree angle from the baseline, and we are moving at a 30-degree angle across a certain path of this orbit, you have to do all the math in your head to figure out exactly what does 5 degrees look like. And so I could see it. I could totally see why they would come back and just be absolutely exhausted from something like this.
Oh, yeah.
Here comes what I think is the worst part, right? You get the astronauts home and you're like, cool, let's fire up the Hubble. Let's get it out there. Let's see what it can do. Not so fast. Not only you had to wait the 10 days for them to actually finish the mission, but then it takes 3 to 4 weeks to go through and update all the software because they made a lot of computer changes.
Mm-hmm.
They have to do all this debugging stuff. They have to test everything. It's like a whole litany of checkboxes they got to go through while a bunch of engineers with thick glasses and smoking lots of cigarettes in the background doing whatever it is that engineers do in a period of time like that. And these astronomers all over the world are just losing their minds. What is taking so long? Yep, they had to align, calibrate, triple check all the systems, fix bugs, and all sorts of stuff. In January 1994, the first images came rolling in. And the very, very first image that came in was a picture of 4 stars.
A picture of 4 stars.
Yeah, it is the most underwhelming thing ever.
Okay. I don't know what else to say to that.
Is your mic off?
No. Is that better?
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's better. I don't know if your mic cut out and you were using your laptop mic.
No, we're good. Sorry.
Okay. No, all good. Yeah, it is a picture of 4 stars, and the name of this star is a very sexy name.
What is it?
And where it's located is even hotter.
What is it?
HD 96755.
That's not sexy. I was hoping for something else.
If you're R2D2, that is the hottest thing in the world.
I mean, I guess, but
I mean, if you're C3PO, you would date that in a heartbeat.
But I'm not.
Okay, fine. The galaxy, not the galaxy, the star cluster that this HD 96755 is located in is in the luxurious catalog of NGC 3532.
Still not sexy. It's just blah.
I know. It's at least we know this. It's in the southern constellation Carina.
Yeah.
Finally, we got a name. The reason why they chose this is because they wanted to test the maximum resolution of the optics that they put in. If you just immediately bring up a giant galaxy, you're not going to be able to see, right? There's parts of it that won't work right because you're just focusing solely on the colors that are coming in. Here, they didn't care about the colors. They were just strictly testing the WIF-PIC lenses that, remember I mentioned earlier, had to be ground quantumly perfect to fix these issues.
Mm-hmm.
So this star is actually a double star. It is not only super far away, but these 2 stars are so dang close that no Earth-bound telescope, including these giant 100-inch telescopes in Chile and all that kind of stuff, the one that was in Chile, I think it was the Campanas Observatory, right? These things are at the top of the Earth. It's 100 inches. They use this to resolve the most finest details possible, the most accurate resolution known to mankind. In telescope manufacturing, there's always a principle that is bigger is better. The bigger the lens, the bigger the mirror will always be more precise than a smaller, even better ground lens or mirror.
Okay.
So, in other words, you have yourself a 100-inch mirror on Earth compared to that 2.4 meter telescope. If you had them both on Earth, there would be absolutely no comparison. That 100-incher would destroy the Hubble in any resolution test.
Okay.
This is the reason why they chose this star, is because these stars are so close together that, with the Campanas Observatory, they look like a kind of an oblong blob. But when Hubble looked at it, you could clearly see 2 separate stars. And that is all they needed. That meant that the resolution of this 2.4 meter telescope is now vastly superior. It is 50% superior than the 100-inch telescope in Chile.
Jeez. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's what they were going for. That's the reason why that first image is like, to you and I, it's like, who cares? But to these engineers and these astronomers, that was the proof that they needed, that this thing is tack sharp. And then it was shortly after that the images came rolling in.
Okay.
Everything from, I think the first one they really took, the most beautiful one, was the Pillars of Creation in the Eagle Nebula. They obviously went back to their old nemesis, the M100 Pinwheel Galaxy, and they slewed that dragon instantly. They shined this thing at at Orion, and yeah. From there, I think we kind of know that the rest is history.
Yeah.
The Hubble telescope was originally only designed to be like a 10-year telescope, and then they were like, okay, maybe with service missions, maybe we could stretch it out to 20 years. In May of 2009, they sent up the last service mission. It was the fourth one. And they obviously upgraded cameras and did all sorts of stuff to it. And they haven't touched it since. And now we are going on, 30 years of operation with, 2000. It's pretty close to 2024. So it's going on, 15 years past its 2009 service mission 4.
Ooh, you make me feel old, but yeah, it's about right.
It is still going strong to this day. Something that was originally supposed to be 10 years lifespan is now exceeding 30, and it is still going strong. And yeah, it does pale. Like the James Webb Telescope gets a lot of attention, and for good reason. It's a pretty incredible piece of engineering. But I mean, that Hubble, keep in mind, James Webb doesn't take visual images like the Hubble does. The James Webb is strictly infrared.
Okay.
Right, that telescope is designed to look at the beginning of the Big Bang kind of a thing, whereas the Hubble is more of a good all-arounder. That's to say, like, James Webb has pointed at Saturn and Jupiter, but they're not like the really cool, pretty pictures that you would want to see that Hubble can do. But yeah, that thing is still going. And as long as it doesn't misplace his glasses anywhere, it should be good to go until it falls out of orbit one day.
Nice.
And that is how you introduce a 2-part series on a topic, finish the first episode, and completely forget about the second one for like 2 more episodes.
It's fine. We did it. We finished it.
So hopefully this wasn't as arduous as some of the other sciencey ones that I do. I'm trying to bring up my inner Neil deGrasse Tyson, where he can just explain things so clearly in words. It's godlike. I'm so jealous.
Yeah, that man is a treasure.
So yep, that's the story of Hubble needing glasses. So,
all right,
what do you got coming up?
Well, a couple housekeeping things, real quick, because I forgot to do that in the beginning.
Oh, okay.
So if you want to email us, contact us, ask us questions, give us ideas for an episode, we really do want to hear from you. Our email is thedaysdumpsterfire@gmail.com. If you want to hit us up on the Instas, you can just send us a direct message. One of us will see it for sure.
And if you have a podcast of yourself that's kind of nerdy, like, hit us up. We can do a shout out.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
We want to. If you guys help us out, we will help you out. Like, there's plenty of room for all us podcasters out there. So the only way we grow is by working together.
For sure. Yeah, that's all I got. The next episode that I am planning on doing is going to be the Battle of Thermopylae, or what a lot of people know it as is the Battle of the 300. But I'm going to switch the perspective a little bit. Usually when that story's told, it's told from the Greek side. I'm going to talk about the Persians a little bit more than the Greeks. We're still going to go over the whole thing with the rundown and all of that fun stuff, but we're going to kind of take a different perspective on that battle, considering it was quite the dumpster fire for the Persians, so we're going to take it that way. So that's what I've got going on.
Okay.
followed by a nap.
No, that's gonna be a good episode, just because like we all know the movie, we've all seen it, and there's things that it gets right, but it's a very stylized Zack Snyder movie, right?
It's entertaining.
Yeah, it's very entertaining, and I mean, regardless of which way you sit on things, it's not like the visuals on it in terms of all the characters are not hard on the eyes. Like it's
I mean, I can't complain about that part.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm straight as a shoot, but I mean, the spray on abs are
pretty glorious. Level. Yeah, they do. Makeup, costume department. Great work, guys. You did a good job.
Well, and who's the guy that plays the king, that emperor? Not the Persian. What was his name?
Oh, the Persian king.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
I can't remember the character's name, but his outfit was wild.
Xerxes,
yeah, because all the chains and the golds and the makeup and
yeah, he didn't really look like that. No. But no. I mean,
but in terms of,
it's pretty cool for the movie.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like they made him out to be this villain by making him visually like, holy cow, what is this guy up to? But I don't think the real Xerxes looked like that at all.
No, he looked like a human. That Xerxes looked like an alien.
Yes, yeah. So, no, that's gonna be cool. I'm curious to see what you come up with from the Persian side of things, because in any dumpster fire, they thought this would be a quick, easy, one battle, one and done. And now it's going on for days, and thousands of bodies are piling up.
Yeah.
This is not going to plan.
Yeah, you really could call the entire Persian War situation a dumpster fire for them. But we're just going to stick to one battle, because for simplicity's sake, you're welcome. But yeah.
No, that's cool. No, I'm looking forward to that. So, and then I'm still debating if I'm going to do the Radium Girls, where we're talking about that earlier, because I've been getting a little bit more information on it. There's a book out there I need to read on it. But I feel like I'm the guy who does all the radiation stories.
You are. That's okay.
Everything from nuclear
Demon
bombs,
Core, Chernobyl.
Yep.
All those things.
I don't know. I'll dig in a little more. See if I can try to put another take on it that people don't really understand. I know the story well, and I know what happened, but for me, it's more like how the women were treated. It was absolutely appalling on how these women were treated for speaking up about these issues. That's kind of the perspective I want to take on it. But it's not something I can really talk about easily and not sound like I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for?
You don't want to mansplain.
Yeah, I don't want to mansplain a very prominent feminist issue in the early 1900s.
Yeah, I think you'll be all right.
I'm
here to support you.
Yeah. Tell me that you're mansplaining, Ed. Shut up.
That's the token lady.
So, all right then. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed it. And keep it a hot mess.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.